In the shadow of a narrow mountain pass, the shattered remnants of bronze whisper the tale of history's greatest sacrifice. By the year 480 BC, the Persian Empire had swallowed the known world, ruling from cities of unimaginable golden wealth. At its helm was King Xerxes, a ruler who viewed himself not as a mortal man, but as a living, breathing god. Driven by an insatiable thirst for conquest, Xerxes assembled an apocalyptic invasion force, blanketing the earth beneath his vast banners. Hundreds of thousands of soldiers marched in terrifying lockstep, a sea of silver spears intent on crushing the fragile West. The Persian war machine ground the earth to dust, rolling forward with the unstoppable momentum of a catastrophic natural disaster. Elite commanders guided this behemoth from horseback, confident that no army on earth could withstand their sheer crushing weight. To reach Europe, they chained ships together across the Hellespont, whipping the sea itself into submission to build their monstrous bridge. The sheer volume of their marching feet kicked up dust storms so massive, they blotted out the horizon entirely. Rhythmic war drums echoed across the dry plains, beating like the monstrous heart of an empire hungry for total domination. News of the approaching juggernaut sent a shock wave of absolute terror through the fragmented and fiercely independent Greek city-states. Desperate messengers ran themselves to the brink of death, carrying warnings that complete annihilation was marching swiftly toward their shores. But nestled in the rugged mountains of the Peloponnese lay Sparta, a society radically different from the rest of Greece. Here, male citizens were stripped of comfort and forged in the brutal fires of the Agoge, an unforgiving military crucible. Under the stern gaze of scarred elders, weakness was systematically and violently beaten out of them, leaving only absolute iron resolve. They were transformed into the ancient world's most perfect killing machines, moving and fighting with terrifying synchronized speed. Leading them was King Leonidas, a battle-hardened monarch who understood that ultimate sacrifice was the true cost of freedom. Seeking divine guidance, the Greeks consulted the Oracle of Delphi, who breathed the intoxicating vapors and spoke darkly of doom. The prophecy was horrifyingly clear, stating that either Sparta would be reduced to ash or it would mourn the death of its king. Accepting his fate without hesitation, Leonidas selected 300 elite veterans, strapping on the heavy bronze armor of their ancestors. Every greave and leather strap was secured with solemn purpose, knowing they were dressing, not for war, but for their own deaths. They took up their massive wooden hoplon shields, bearing the fierce lambda symbol that would soon strike absolute terror into Persian hearts. Finally, the iconic Corinthian helmets were donned, their crimson horsehair crests standing tall and defiant against the bright blue sky. With a single command, Leonidas led his 300 warriors away from their weeping families, stepping onto the path of immortality. The small vanguard of red cloaks cut a striking path through the harsh Greek landscape, marching purposefully toward the perilous north. Like a crimson serpent navigating the rugged terrain, they moved closer to the geographical choke point that would forever define their legacy. Along the way, roughly 6,000 allied Greek soldiers joined their ranks, finding deep courage in the shadow of the Spartan elite. As night fell near the crashing Aegean Sea, the dancing light of their campfires reflected across a vast sea of polished bronze. Their destination was Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, a treacherous and impossibly narrow passage wedged between sheer cliffs and deep, dark water. In this 50-foot wide gap, Xerxes' millions of men would be utterly useless, forced to fight the heavily armored Greeks face to face. Working with feverish speed, the Greeks rebuilt an ancient stone wall, heavily fortifying the narrowest choke point of the mountain pass. They drove sharpened wooden stakes deep into the hard earth, creating a brutal physical barrier to break the impending Persian charge. Trapped between the angry crashing sea and the towering rocks, there was absolutely no room for retreat and no chance for surrender. Soon, A terrifying darkness swelled on the distant horizon as the massive Persian vanguard finally arrived, choking the air with thick dust. Standing proudly atop the stone wall, King Leonidas watched with stone-cold composure as the earth literally trembled beneath the enemy's approach. The Persian encampment stretched infinitely into the distance, a sprawling, endless city of tents, threatening to swallow the tiny Greek defense. Persian scouts were baffled to find the Spartans casually exercising and combing their long hair, mistaking their sacred death ritual for foolishness. Arriving in his lavish golden chariot, King Xerxes peered down at the pass, stunned that such a pathetic force dared to defy him. Hoping to avoid a needless slaughter, Xerxes dispatched a royal emissary who rode out to offer the arrogant Spartans a chance to yield. The Persian rider aggressively demanded that the Greeks lay down their weapons immediately and submit to the boundless mercy of the god king. Staring him dead in the eyes, Leonidas uttered the two most legendary words in military history: "Molon Lab, come and take them." Humiliated and completely enraged, the emissary wheeled his horse around, fleeing back to the Persian lines to unleash the devastating wrath of Xerxes. As dawn broke over the mountains on the first day of battle, a heavy sea fog clung tightly to the rocks of the hot gates. Xerxes unleashed his Median and Sicyan infantry, sending a massive roaring wave of flesh right into the narrow, claustrophobic choke point. With a thunderous roar from Leonidas, the Spartans stepped sharply forward, slamming their heavy shields together to form a perfectly impenetrable wall. The legendary Spartan phalanx was born in blood and bronze, a terrifying, grinding machine of overlapping shields and deadly ashwood spears. For the charging Persian soldiers, looking at this faceless, unyielding wall of metal was exactly like staring directly into the jaws of death. The collision was utterly deafening, as thousands of lightly armored Persians smashed against the Spartan bronze like ocean water breaking upon a rock. Long Spartan spears easily pierced the flimsy Persian wicker shields, turning the front lines into an agonizing, violently bloody meat grinder. Trapped deeply in the claustrophobic pass, the overwhelming numbers of the Persian army became their greatest weakness, crushed forward by their own men. The air grew impossibly thick with the horrifying sounds of shattering wood, scraping metal, and the desperate, gurgling screams of dying men. Leonidas fought like a terrifying demon possessed, using the immense weight of his bronze shield to crush his enemies against the unforgiving stone. When a Spartan grew tired, another seamlessly took his place in the line, maintaining a flawless, horrific rhythm of systematic, unfeeling slaughter. The dusty earth of Thermopylae quickly turned to a deep, dark, crimson mud, heavily trampled by the heavy bronze sandals of the Greek defenders. The Persian rear lines pushed frantically forward, completely unaware that they were marching their own screaming comrades directly into a brutal slaughterhouse. Even when their spears shattered under the strain, the Spartans used the broken wooden shafts with deadly precision, leaving a trail of shattered skulls. Covered entirely in the blood of his enemies, a Spartan warrior roared a fiercely defiant challenge to the endless sea of bewildered invaders. By nightfall, massive mountains of Persian dead choked the narrow mountain pass, while the Spartan shield wall remained entirely unbroken and victorious. Watching from a distant, safe hillside, King Xerxes was visibly shaken, trembling with absolute fury as his seemingly invincible army was utterly humiliated. Under the quiet, peaceful canopy of stars, the Spartans calmly sharpened their bloody blades, completely untroubled by the ocean of enemies waiting for dawn. Day 2 brought a terrifying new threat, as the deep, echoing blast of Persian war horns signaled the arrival of Xerxes' ultimate weapon. 10,000 elite warriors known as the Immortals marched forward in deadly, unsettling silence, wearing black robes and heavy iron-scale armor. Their faces were completely hidden behind haunting, expressionless masks, projecting an aura of emotionless dread as they carried their silver-tipped spears. The visual contrast was stark and terrifying as the black-clad immortals surged violently forward to clash with the crimson-cloaked Spartan warriors. An immortal confidently attempted to vault the Spartan shield wall, only to be instantly impaled and tossed aside like a broken, bleeding doll. Close-quarters combat was vicious and blindingly fast, but the Spartans' far superior armor and lifetime of training easily overpowered the Persian elites. Suddenly, the Spartans dramatically broke formation, running frantically backward in what appeared to the enemy to be a desperate, panicked retreat. Believing they had finally broken the Greeks, the immortals surged blindly forward, only for the Spartans to instantaneously spin around and massacre them. It was a flawless, brutally effective tactical maneuver, leaving the Persian elite guard completely devastated under the relentless, crushing Spartan counterattack. Xerxes leapt from his golden throne in outright, undeniable terror, watching the total, bloody destruction of his most prized and unbeatable warriors. Desperate to break the humiliating stalemate, Persian commanders ordered thousands of archers to the front, knocking their arrows in perfect, deadly unison. The deafening, synchronized snap of 10,000 bowstrings echoing at once sent a wave of absolute, terrifying dread through the rocky mountain pass. A horrifying black cloud of arrows arced incredibly high into the sky, so massive and incredibly dense that it entirely eclipsed the blazing sun. The Spartan warrior, Leonidas, merely smiled at the sudden, unnatural darkness, famously declaring with a laugh that they would simply enjoy fighting in the shade. As the deadly rain violently descended, the Spartans raised their bronze shields, forming an impenetrable turtle shell that sparked brightly with heavy deflections. Hundreds of arrows embedded themselves deeply into the thick wood and bronze, but not a single piece of Persian iron drew precious Spartan blood. When the suffocating dust finally settled, the Spartan phalanx lowered their shields, staring back at the Persians completely unharmed and dangerously eager for more. As the sun set on the bloody second day, Xerxes fully realized that direct assault against the hot gates was a mathematically impossible suicide mission. But deep in the chaotic heart of the Persian camp, the sinister flicker of torchlight revealed a darkness far worse than any iron weapon. A malformed local Greek named Ephialtes crept nervously through the hostile shadows, seeking an audience with the highest-ranking enemy commanders. Blinded entirely by cowardice and greed, the traitor whispered a devastating secret, offering to completely sell out his countrymen for the promise of immense wealth. The heavy metallic clink of Persian gold violently hitting the wooden table permanently sealed the tragic fate of the 300 Spartans standing guard below. A wicked, triumphant smile spread slowly across Xerxes' face as he finally learned of a hidden goat path that bypassed the hot gates entirely. Under the cover of total, suffocating darkness, a long, winding trail of Persian torches began to snake its way secretly up the treacherous mountain. The surviving immortals marched silently up the steep ridges, their heavy boots crunching softly against the loose rocks of the hidden deadly trail. High above the pass, the small contingent of allied Greek guards awoke in sheer, unadulterated panic, realizing the massive Persian army had finally flanked them. Firing a desperate, scattered volley of arrows into the encroaching dark, the massively outmatched guards fled into the higher peaks to save their own lives. The third dawn broke with an eerie, dreadful coldness, casting long, fatalistic blue shadows over the exhausted, blood-stained Spartan encampment. A breathless scout sprinted frantically into the camp, delivering the soul-crushing news to King Leonidas that they had been utterly and completely betrayed. Looking up at the jagged cliffs, Leonidas saw the terrifying, undeniable silhouette of Persian banners cresting the ridge right behind their heavily fortified position. Panic swept rapidly through the allied Greek forces as they realized the trap had sprung, hastily packing their gear to avoid total, impending slaughter. Knowing their tactical position was permanently lost, Leonidas ordered the main army to retreat, choosing to stay behind and buy them precious time with his life. 300 Spartans alongside 700 Thespians and 400 Thebans willingly and fearlessly chose to remain and die in the narrow pass. With calm, terrifying resolve, the Spartans ritually brushed and tied back their long hair, preparing themselves spiritually for a beautiful death in combat. Leaving the safety of their fortified stone wall, the doomed warriors marched forward into the wider part of the pass to maximize the coming slaughter. Their bruised and heavily bloodied faces held absolutely no fear, radiating an intense, almost supernatural readiness to rip the enemy to pieces. The Persian horde poured down into the valley from both the front and the rear, slamming the massive jaws of the trap shut around the tiny Greek force. Leonidas swung his sword with the strength of a titan, roaring a final, thunderous battle cry as the Persian tsunami crashed down upon them. The legendary unbreakable phalanx finally shattered, dissolving into a horrific, hyper-violent melee of desperate, bloody hand-to-hand slaughter. Spartan spears finally snapped from absolute overuse, the thick ash wood splintering into 1,000 pieces against the endless sea of enemy shields. Without a moment of hesitation, the Spartans drew their short iron swords, stepping dangerously close to gut their foes in chaotic, violently fluid motions. The pass quickly became a suffocating, inescapable nightmare of flying dirt, sweat, and geysers of blood as the Greeks fought like rabid, cornered wolves. Bronze helmets were ripped away in the suffocating crush, revealing warriors fighting with unhinged fury, completely surrounded by dozens of screaming enemies. Even at the bitter end, Leonidas moved with lethal grace, cutting down the Persian elites as quickly as they dared to approach him. But, from the safety of the rocky ridge above, a cowardly Persian archer drew his bowstring painfully tight, aiming directly at the Spartan king. The fatal arrow found its devastating mark, piercing Leonidas deep in the side, sending the mighty king crashing down heavily to the bloody earth. A chorus of anguished, terrifyingly violent roars erupted from the surviving Spartans as they watched their deeply beloved king fall to his knees. Abandoning all sense of personal survival or military formation, the Spartans rushed into a frenzied vortex of violence to protect his fallen body. Standing directly over the king's lifeless corpse, they swung their broken swords with an animalistic wrath, violently hacking Persian soldiers to pieces. A gruesome, horrifying tug of war ensued over the body of Leonidas, the ground rapidly becoming a slippery, bloody mountain of the dead and dying. Barehanded and bleeding profusely, shattered Spartans fought on with their fists and their teeth, absolutely refusing to yield a single inch of ground. The incredibly small circle of surviving Greeks was now entirely swallowed by an endless, swirling ocean of thousands of heavily armed Persian troops. Slowly, agonizingly, they dragged the bloody body of their king backward up a small hillock, forming their absolute, final defensive ring. Bleeding heavily and gasping desperately for air, the last Spartan commander raised his shattered blade to the heavens, daring them to come and finish it. Terrified of the unending Greek fury, the Persian infantry cowardly backed away, absolutely refusing to engage them in close combat for a single second longer. Instead, Xerxes ordered his archers forward, thousands of bows drawn painfully tight against the clear, mocking blue of the Mediterranean sky. A deafening, terrifying whistle ripped through the air as a massive, dark cloud of arrows descended rapidly upon the final cluster of heroes. The Spartans raised what was left of their shattered, heavy bronze shields, bravely bracing for the inevitable, brutal end of their legendary stand. The immense kinetic force of the arrow storm violently buckled their bronze, tearing through metal, wood, and flesh with absolutely unstoppable violence. Pierced by dozens of deadly shafts, the last Spartan collapsed heavily into the bloody dust, his grip finally slipping from his iron sword. An eerie, horrifying silence fell completely over the pass. The small hill, now completely blanketed by a thick, deadly forest of Persian arrows. The lifeless, scarred hand of King Leonidas rested peacefully in the dirt, covered gently by the torn fabric of his crimson Spartan cloak. Walking slowly among the mountains of the dead, King Xerxes felt no triumph, only the chilling realization that his invincible empire had been deeply wounded. The blood soaked permanently into the earth of Thermopylae. But the time bravely bought by the 300 would soon change the world forever. Months later, a united Greek navy channeled the fierce spirit of the Spartans, utterly destroying the massive Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. The bloody vengeance was completed on the fields of Plataea, where the heavy Greek infantry decisively crushed the remnants of the Persian invasion. Greece was miraculously saved, its triumphant forces roaring in absolute victory under the sun, permanently securing the future of Western civilization itself. Thousands of years later, the hot gates are a place of quiet serenity, the brutal, deafening carnage replaced by gently whispering green grass. But a magnificent stone monument stands tall on that exact hallowed ground, crowned by the fierce, unyielding bronze statue of King Leonidas. At the base of the monument lies a simple, ancient stone plaque carrying the immense, heartbreaking weight of history in its weathered Greek letters. Bathed in soft golden sunlight, the immortal words of the poet Simonides speak softly to anyone who visits this incredibly sacred battlefield. High above the mountains, a solitary eagle soars freely in the clear blue sky, a living testament to the ultimate price paid for that freedom. We must remember the unblinking, fearless eyes of the warriors who stared directly into the face of absolute annihilation, without taking a single step backward. We must remember the perfect, terrifying unity of the crimson-cloaked phalanx, marching shoulder to shoulder, straight into the fiery mouth of hell. We must remember the violent, earth-shattering clash of bronze, where the unbreakable will of free men completely broke the spine of a tyrannical empire. We must remember the thunderous final roar of a king who chose willingly to die on his feet rather than live a single day on his knees. The narrow, blood-soaked pass of the hot gates proved that it does not matter how many enemies you face, only exactly where you choose to stand. Though the landscape now sleeps peacefully, the deafening echoes of their incredible defiance still reverberate eternally through the rugged mountains of Greece. Thermopylae was never just a battle. It was the brutal crucible that forged the very concept of liberty in the terrifying fires of impossible odds. As the sun sets beautifully on the rugged peaks, the long shadows remind us of the immense, terrifying darkness they so bravely held back. The fine dust that blows across the graves of the 300 is the very same dust that birthed the greatest legends of our history. The Aegean Sea continues to crash violently against the shore, an eternal natural drumbeat honoring the brave men who absolutely refused to be moved. Against the fiery canvas of the twilight sky, the stoic silhouette of Leonidas stands as an eternal guardian against the encroaching forces of tyranny. Out of the rocky, blood-soaked soil, the brilliant red poppy blooms, a quiet, beautiful symbol of the precious blood spilled for our tomorrow. The ghosts of the Spartan shield wall fade slowly into the evening wind, their duty completely fulfilled, their glory cemented until the end of time. Modern civilization drives past these ancient mountains every single day, entirely built upon the unshakable foundation of their completely unthinkable sacrifice. Even as dark storm clouds gather over the pass, the legacy of the hot gates remains a brilliant beacon of courage in the absolute darkest of times. To stand quietly before their monument is to bow in deep reverence to the greatest display of martial bravery the world will ever know. Under the eternal watchful canopy of the stars, the coastal pass of Thermopylae guards its violent secrets, holding forever the memories of the exceptionally brave. Go tell the Spartans, stranger passing by, that here, entirely obedient to their unbreakable laws, we proudly lie.